Hey now, Brawlers, it's time for another Board Game Brawl review with Nick Minahan, sponsored by BoardGameBliss.com.
Hey now, today we're going to take a look at DragonFlame from Minion Games. In this game, each player takes control of a dragon, and you are trying to get an immense amount of treasure. Whoever has the most treasure at the end of the game, i.e. victory points, is going to be the winner. Yes, this game gives into the age-old stereotype that dragons only care about treasure. I hope that one day we can live in a fantasy world where dragons are judged by their character, not by their treasure hoard. But hey, you're also trying to kill villagers as well. Let's go ahead and take a brief look at how this game is played. Then we're going to come back. I'll let you know what I think. Alright, so this is the setup for a 5-player game of DragonFlame. Each player is going to get 3 cards from the main deck. You're going to get 15 DragonFlame tokens of your color, a little cheat sheet card. Then you're going to get randomly one of the red banner cards. Now, the red banner cards and the blue banner cards are double-sided. They have a castle on one side and the banner on the other side with these little either light or darkened out card slots on the bottom. I'll get back to what all that means, but everyone's going to randomly get one of these. You're always going to have one more of these banner cards than you're going to have number of players. So you'll always have one that you're just going to put off to the side at the end of each, or at the beginning of each round. Then with the blue banner cards, you're going to put those at the beginning of the game, castle side up, in a row from 1 to 6. Now from here on out, only in the first round are the banners that go in front of players, which also determine turn order. Only in the first round are those going to be random. From here on out, it's going to be deterministic each round. Once everyone's got their cards, you're going to put the rest of the cards in a pile there in the center of the table. Then you're going to put one meadow card in the center of the table and shuffle up the rest of the village cards, including the other meadow, and put it randomly around in a 3x3 grid surrounding that central meadow. Now, the goal of this game is to have the most glory points by the end. The end of the game is going to occur when there's only one card left in the main deck. Each round after the first, you're going to get 3 more cards into your hands. So you're going to be constantly putting these cards out on different castles. And after you've gone through the entire deck and there's only one card left, you'll stop, count up all your glory points. Whoever has the most is going to be the winner. Now, glory points are going to be gained in a number of ways, mostly through treasure cards that you get from the main deck, but also from burning down the villages. First, let me just explain how a typical turn is going to work. You're going to look at your banner cards and see who has the lowest number. So starting with that person and then working your way up. So whoever has the 1 card will go first and the 2 cards. So it's not always going to be, it won't be in clockwise or counterclockwise order. It's in the turn order determined by your banners. In that order, each player is going to play 1 card from their hand onto one of the castles. Now let me go ahead and focus in a bit here. Now on the castles, aside from the turn order numbers, which are up there in the top corners, you also have card limitations. Now the 1 and 2 are the only ones here that are going to force you to only play a certain amount of cards. So that only 2 cards can be played on the first castle, only 3 can be on the second, but on the other castles, an infinite amount of cards can be played. So if it's my turn, I'm going to choose one of those castles, and I'm going to place a card onto it. Now, the thing is, you have to look at the banner card that you currently have in front of you to determine how you get to place that card. In this case, because I have a lightened out space for my first card, I have to place my first card that I choose to play face up onto one of the castles. My next 2, however, when it gets back around to me, so every player is going to play a card, then it gets back to you, you play your second one. My next 2 have to be face down. I could put them on the same castle because this has an infinite symbol, or I could put them on one of the other castles, so long as on the first 2 castles, the limit of cards has not been reached. So you're going to keep doing this, and let's just speed it up a bit and say that every player places a bunch of cards down on all of these different castles. Well, sure, something like that. Then it goes back to whoever's the first player for the round, and then you're going to choose which castle to sack, which one to take the stack of cards from. You can take it from whichever one you want, but you should have been paying attention to see where players were putting down face-down cards, which might be bad for you because not every card is good, and remembering where you put down cards that you might want to grab. Wherever you finally decide, you decide to take that stack and you put it and the castle that the cards were on top of in front of you. So what will end up happening is that the cards that you took will end up as part of your horde, unless they're DragonFlame cards, which work a little bit differently. But for instance, I got this what's called a statue card, so I'm just going to put that in front of me. If I had other kind of permanent cards like the ruby necklace, I would put that in front of me as well if I sacked that particular castle. And the DragonFlame is a special ability, which I'll get back to as my explanation in a minute. When I got done doing that, I'm going to put my initiative card, my red banner, out into the middle of the table to show that I've already taken my castle. Once everyone has taken a castle, then we're going to discard whichever castle is left over from the row and put the castle card that it was associated with off to the side. Then everyone's going to flip over the castle card that they took, and voila, now that is your new initiative, which for me in this example happened to be 6 again. At that point, once your new initiative is set, every player is going to get 3 more cards from the main deck, and you're going to do it all over again. You'll put all the red cards that people used this initiative before, flip them over to their castle side, make a new row of 6 cards, and then do it all over again. Players putting down their cards from the main deck onto each of the castles in the new turn order, going back into turn order and deciding which castles to sack. Now at this point, let's go ahead and take a look at the cards that you're going to run into and what they mean in the main deck. Alright, so first and foremost, very simply, you have the treasure cards. These are just whatever points are on the top of the card. These are glory points. So if you have these in your horde, you just get that amount of points. Nothing to it. No special rules. Then you have statues. And statues are always going to award you 5 points each, but only if they are unique in your horde. So for instance, if I only had one Tyrion statue, I would get 5 points. If I ever took a second Tyrion statue, they're worth nothing. But I can have a Marston statue and a Tyrion statue, and each of them will be worth 5. I just can't double up on them. Then you have the chests, and the chests are sort of the exponential modifier type treasure in this game. The more of the same chests you have, the more points they're worth. So if I have just one chest, it's worth 1 point. If I have 2 chests, they're each worth 2 points. If I have 3 chests, they're each worth 3 points, and so on and so forth. But the catch with that is that just like with the others, with the statues, there's multiple different kinds of chests. If I have to focus on one type of chest, if I have a second type of chest, I can only count one set of chests for points, and in fact, the other sets of chests that I don't count for positive points are negative points. -1 for every chest that is not of the one I've chosen to specialize in. Not exponential, just -1 for each chest. Here's a positive card, the Princess. The Princess gives me a glory point at the end of the game for each unique type of treasure that I have. Treasure is everything, by the way, so for every unique type of chest, every unique type of statue, I will gain a point. The Knight is straight up negative points. If you have him in your horde, you get -3 points. The Curse afflicts people who diversify too much in their treasure chests, which is another thing that compounds the negative points that you get. If you have a curse and you can only be affected by one curse, you get -2 for each different unique type of chest that you have. Then you have special magical items, which all do something crazy and different. So for instance, the Amulet of Illusion says that at the end of the game, you can swap a treasure with another player of your choice. The Orb of Scrying says that each round you can look at one of the hidden cards in the castle after all cards have been placed. Then you have the Tome of Fire. At the end of the game, swap the location of 2 fire tokens. Well, what could that possibly mean? And that's the last type of card we're going to take a look at. You have the DragonFlame cards. They come in 1, 2, and 3 variety. That determines how much flame you get to put out in the village. Yes, that's right. Here is the village burning down part, the most exciting part of the game, sorta. Now let's say that I grabbed one of those DragonFlame cards from one of the castles. I'm going to resolve it right away. Let's say it's the 3 flame. How this works, your dragon is swooping down through the village, which means that it has to shoot out its fire in a straight line. And that means that I can't go through one of the meadows. The meadows are effectively blocking terrain. They're keeping you from going from this village to this village. But what I could do, when you're putting down your fire tokens, they always have to be in the lowest numbered spot on one of these village cards. So I could go here and do, again, this is assuming I had the 3 DragonFlame card. Or I could go in this direction if I wanted to instead. Or there's nothing stopping me from, for instance, going down this way instead, or going down this way instead. I just wouldn't be able to get the full usage of that 3. So let's just say I go ahead and do those top 3 up there. You can't double up on the same card. They have to be in a straight line, and you always start with the lowest number, which is to your benefit, because if there's ever a tie at the end of the game for points, it's whoever gets to burn that village first. And how this works is majority control. At the bottom of the cards, it'll have points, like for instance for Charlotte, it's 9 victory points, 5 victory points, and 2 victory points. Whoever has the most on that card is going to get 9 victory points, whoever most flames. Whoever has the second most is 5, whoever has the third most is 2. Some of the cards, like Scaldale, only has 2 spots, 8 and 4 points. Ignatius only has 8 and 4 points. And again, if there are ties for determining who gets what points, whoever burned the village first is going to get those points. The catch to all of this, however, is that nobody gets any points if the village is not completely burned. So if, for example, Green and I are up here in Scaldale, and I'm like, all right, some sweet, juicy points. We're both going to get some points. If no one ever puts out that last token, nobody gets points. The village was not completely burned down. We don't get the kudos for it. And that is really DragonFlame. There's a couple other little minor details, but essentially what you're doing is you're putting out cards on each of the different castles, trying to bluff out your opponents and trying to make sure cards are in the spot that you want them to be in order to take them when it comes time to take them from the castle. Once you take them, you're going to resolve them either by putting treasure into your hoard, using the DragonFlame cards to put tokens out onto the board, possibly taking negative point cards as well. Then with your new castle, determining the new turn order, putting out the old turn order cards as the new castles and doing it over and over again until there's only one card left in the deck. The game ends. Everyone adds up all their glory. Whichever dragon has the most glory is the winner. Now, let's get to my final thoughts. I like the artwork and the components in DragonFlame. I mean, for what is essentially a relatively small card game, it's got some neat stuff to it. I like the little flame bits and the artwork on the cards, even though you don't really have anything representing your characters too much, just the random DragonFlame cards that come out of the deck. The theme of the game is pretty solid. I mean, you're wreaking havoc on this village that you have out here, burning it down and putting your little flame tokens out and trying to go for these different castles that are filled with princesses and knights and all that. Some things about the theme are kind of awkward. The primary thing being how you gain treasure. This is where, this is essentially a set collection game with some extra stuff added on to it. And when it gets to that set collection part, the theme kind of falls apart. Like, why would a dragon only want one of a certain statue? Why not have more statues? Do they really lose their value when they're next to other statues of the same kind? Or with the treasure chest, like, oh, no. I've got these treasure chests. Don't you dare try and give me those treasure chests. I don't want them. That doesn't make a lot of thematic sense to me. I think a dragon would just want all of the treasure. But, okay, that's a nitpicky thing. But otherwise, I think that theme and components-wise, the game is pretty solid. Now, moving on to the gameplay, there's a lot of interesting things going on here. It's kind of odd because when you look at the game, you can't really just narrow it down to just a set collection game, because you have this whole board aspect of the different villager cards that you're trying to burn down, which is a very interesting thing to add on to the game. But then as far as the actual castle rating goes with the cards, that whole bluffing aspect is the main central part of the game that I think is the most interesting. That you are forced to put down a certain amount of cards face down, and you would want to, of course, but it's deciding which cards you have to put face down, which ones you're going to put face up, which ones you're going to try and force or bluff your opponents into thinking, oh, you put a lot of good stuff there, let me go ahead and grab that. And which one are you trying to say, oh, make your opponents go, okay, I don't want that, that's probably full of bad stuff, I'll go for this one instead. And you grab that pile because that's where you put the exact card that you needed. A lot of this is mitigating losses, like, okay, I really don't want opponents to take this, so I'm going to go ahead and put one of my face-up cards here as a curse card, or the knight card. But the face-down cards here that I put will be the treasure chest that's going to give me an exponential more bonus, or a princess that I really needed. And that is, you have to make that choice. Are you willing to take that many negative points in order to get what you need to get done accomplished? And of course, how badly are your opponents going to screw you by putting more negative cards there? That is a very fascinating part of the game and probably the best part about it. Now, the only real criticism I have about the game, and by the way, just to clarify, I think this is a solid, fun game. But if I had to pick out criticisms, I would say it has to do with the imbalances in the scoring. I think that there's a couple of different ways of scoring, primarily the burning the village cards, or tiles, whatever you want to call them, and also getting the exponential treasure chest bonuses are like way better, and you should definitely be going after those as much as you possibly can. And with the treasure chest, it's not too difficult to foil someone from getting a lot of bonuses with that. You just load them up with other types of treasure chests and keep them from getting the ones that they really need. It's not too tough to keep that strategy from going way, way overboard. The problem with the burning the villages cards is that because of the random nature, this game is very random, and because of that random nature of the deck, you may never end up with that many DragonFlame cards in your hand, which means that you have much less control over when you're going to get them. And I've seen games of DragonFlame, I played this 4 times now at this point. I've seen games where someone ends up with or 2 or 3 players, depending on how many players you're playing with, end up with all of the DragonFlame cards, and 1 or 2 players are like, wow, really would be great to put some flame down there in the village. Because if you don't have control over if you don't have it in your hand and control where it's going, you have no control over getting it. You may randomly get it because someone puts it in a pile that maybe they intended to take, but you ended up taking anyways. And eventually, it starts to becoming diminishing returns on those cards. So you might actually get stuck with those DragonFlame cards when you can't possibly do anything that useful out in the village. Everyone else has already taken all the best points, and at that point, the only other interesting part about that is that you might be able to screw someone by just hoarding those DragonFlame cards and, well, you can't really hoard them. I guess you can't really, but you can try and put DragonFlame out on cards that you don't really care if they complete or not in order to make other ones not complete and give points to players. But it's an interesting concept. It doesn't really work out that much in theory. It's really hard to screw people that win after those cards hot and heavy, because then all they need is a couple other cards to finish it, and then they get a bunch of points. So I really think that as much as that's probably one of the coolest thematic parts of the game is burning those different village cards, it's also one of the most unbalanced things as far as the points go. And together with some of the inconsistencies of the different items, like it's always better to go for the chest as opposed to the statues or even the princess. And the knights aren't that big a deal if you're grabbing a ton of other points from those chests. That's kind of a wonky thing. But ultimately, the game is light. The game is fast. You shouldn't be taken too seriously, I think. And I think that it's a step up from a traditional trick-taking game per se, or even lighter set collection game. And an even heavier game. So I wouldn't call this a gateway game by any means, but I think it's good for casual people who like the theme, and who want something with just a little bit of an edge and bite to it with all that different bluffing and trying to screw over your neighbor, but not too confrontational at the same time. If you can get over little scoring foibles like I had a problem with, it's a solid game. That is DragonFlame from Minion Games.
Thanks for watching. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Patreon. And make sure to check out our sponsor, Board Game Bliss, where you can find an amazing selection of games from around the world. BoardGameBliss.com. Thanks for your support.